Hello and welcome back to Alec's 50th annual meeting here in Orlando, Florida. I'm joined right now by Miss Reagan Paul for the great state of Maine. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you are newly elected.
Yes, I'm a freshman legislator in the state of Maine.
And what was the overall inspiration? Because you do have, from what I remember, a little bit of a political background before you ran for office.
Somewhat. I've always been involved with politics growing up, but this was my first time running for office. And really, it was funny how it all lined up. It was a traditionally blue seat in the state representatives, and the Republican who was going to run for office, I just did not agree with. He's kind of a Bernie Sanders guy and just not ideologically aligned with me.
Not the traditional conservative approach.
No, maybe they might be conservative in Maine. I don't know. Honestly, I just didn't agree with him. I thought I could vote for him and not agree, or I could do something about it and run myself. So I had no experience prior to that running for office, put my name in. I knocked on about 1,000 doors for the primary, ended up winning the primary 74% of the vote. Then I went on to knock about 4,000 more doors in my district and won the general.
Wow. And I know this is the wrong thing to do. It's like going against everything that you're told, but this was at the ripe old age of
24.
Oh,
I was 23
24.
when I was elected, but I'm 24 now.
Wow. To have that much gumption to go up and go. And so obviously this is your first term over there. What has wait, you were just elected in
2022.
So you've had a turn then inside the legislature. How was the first season?
It was a learning curve. It was a lot of information overload all at once, but honestly, I really enjoyed it. There were obviously times I wanted to bang my head against the wall in frustration, but overall, I'm really blessed to be able to serve the people I did. Had a lot of good mentors who kind of showed me the ropes and understand how the legislative process works. And there were definitely some heartbreaking losses we had during the session, but also a huge learning experience just to carry over the next session and see what we can get done.
Now, for those of us, we know the state of Maine, but what part of Maine are you representing? Where is that on the old Maine?
So more in central Maine. So
okay.
I live in a town called Winterport. I represent 5 towns in Waldo County. So it's Winterport, part of Frankfort, Prospect, Stockton Springs, and Searsport.
And what are the people of those little cities and towns, what are they looking for? What are they hoping for? Why were you able to sway them to your side in a traditional blue county?
Well, that's a great question. It probably could be hours long conversation about that. To be honest with you, there's no rhyme or reason why they would elect again, I always call myself the 3 C's, a Christian constitutional conservative. And I was very bold at the door, told people exactly what I believed and why. And I think, honestly, the authenticity and the honesty, people really appreciated. A lot of people might not have agreed with all my policies or my personal beliefs, but they just really respected I was upfront and honest with them. I keep telling the joke that I was actually, by a political consultant, advised to not put Republican on my palm card.
Okay.
I said I would alienate voters, try to keep a little bit more neutral. So I said, okay. So I put principled conservative at the top of my palm card so everyone knew exactly where I was coming from.
Okay.
And I think people appreciated that. And also the door knocking, I think, was huge because a lot of people in my district had never had a candidate knock on their door before. I live in kind of a half rural, kind of ocean district, which was surprising that they had never had a candidate go to their door, but they appreciated the hard work. And
so was the person that you replaced, assuming the incumbent, had they been in that seat for a while? They were feeling awfully comfortable that they didn't have to go out and shake hands?
Well, the Democrat who was holding that seat before decided to step down. So it was an open seat, but they kind of handpicked their replacement who was very similar.
Who thought that he or she would just...
Right, kind of had the right to the throne,
oh, look at this constitutional conservative who's going to be at the...
Right.
So cute going out there and knocking on the doors like that's actually going to accomplish anything, talking to the people.
Well, right. And a lot of people, unfortunately, like to legislate based on their feelings or opinions. And I was very upfront with them. Again, as a Christian, I'm not going to violate my Christian principles and morals. And when I swear an oath to the Constitution, that means something to me.
Right.
So I'm never going to violate my constitutional oath and also adhere to principles of small and limited government. That's how I approach every legislation. I don't care what letter is behind the name of the person who sponsors it or what kind of intent the bill has. Has to pass those 3 tests before I support that bill, and people respect that.
Well, with the name like Reagan Paul, you really don't have much of a choice.
I really don't. I was kind of born into it in a lot of ways.
You get it from one end and the other overall. Okay, so during the first session, were you sitting back and listening? Were there bills that you were actually going through and pushing for? Like, what was your main focus? What were you trying to accomplish in the first year?
I didn't really have any main focus or main policy I was really trying to go for. I had put in 5 bills, but the majority of them I tried to do a voter ID bill, and you can kind of guess how that fared in Maine.
Ambitious.
Yes. I tried that. I also had a concealed carry permit bill. We do have constitutional carry.
You said that could go either way in Maine.
It could have. We're actually very good on gun policy, but this bill specifically was just aligning with federal law, the Gun-Free School Zones Act, to allow concealed carry permit holders to carry on school property.
Okay.
To protect our kids, and that went party line, as you could expect. And then really the one I still have hope for is my nuclear energy bill that I put in, because Maine is struggling with energy policy. And I put in a bill that got carried over the next session, so I still have some hope there, to have the Maine Public Utility Commission to look into small modular nuclear reactors and get RFPs on the cost and estimated time.
And yeah, that has been a wave of the future. And it's interesting when you take that approach when it comes to energy. A lot of folks go over and say, oh, we have to look at the European model, and they're converting everything into the renewables and all of that. It's like, well, as Germany's converted to the renewables,
Right.
they've realized that there are days when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine,
Right.
and therefore we don't have energy. Maybe it's time to start those nuclear plants back up.
Right, and in Sweden, I believe it was, I was reading an article the other day, and they actually changed their energy goals from 100% renewable to 100% fossil free to allow nuclear energy to be part of the generation source.
I like
And
that,
I'm like,
fossil
that was a little
free.
sneaky. Yeah, so they believe that solar and wind, you can't do it alone. They need a base load. And again, if the goal is carbon neutrality, nuclear is an awesome generation source. It has a small area footprint, high capacity factor. I think it'd be a great fit for Maine. We already had nuclear energy in Maine with Maine Yankee, and it's a long history there, sordid tale. But I think SMRs are the way of the future. Our neighbor to the north in New Brunswick, they're already investing in SMRs. Tennessee Valley Authority is already investing in 5 or 6 more SMRs right now. So I think it is definitely conversation we'll be having going into the future.
Yeah, and there's, even though, as I was saying, like Germany is pushing off of it, France has definitely embraced it. And so
Right.
we're seeing success. We're seeing the people actually go out there and do it. I think it's a nice way to go overall that sort of covers everybody's base overall.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the last bill I did put in was a pro-life bill to try to limit chemical abortion pills being prescribed through telehealth means in order to protect women and children. So that was kind of the 4 kind of very different kind of bills I put in during the session, but they're important topics to have to get out there.
And I assume this is part of what you discussed when you knocked on the doors and you
Yes.
told people. And as you were saying, there's a long joke, a standing history of politicians saying one thing and doing something completely different.
Right.
And I would assume that for the folks there in Maine whose doors you did knock on, I said, one way or another, whether I may not agree with this young lady on this policy or that, at least she's actually telling me what she's going to do.
Right. I actually had people kind of say that to my face when I was at the door. I mean, I'd kind of go, I was very upfront with them at the door. I told them who I was, what I was running for. And I had a palm card, kind of whatever my basic highlights of my beliefs. And I really put it back on them. I said, as a representative, what's important to you? Because if I'm elected, I want to represent your interests. And a lot of people were not used to having the conversation turn on them. Like, oh, you actually want to hear from me. It's not just listening
What I
to all the
think?
reasons why you're awesome and I should vote for you. And they really responded to that. But I mean, there were different people who didn't necessarily maybe agree with my pro-life stance or certain constitutional issues, but they respected that I have a foundation I'm going to vote on. And that builds trust when people know how you're going to vote on things. It's not going to be based on my intellect or one lobbyist says this in one bill or another.
Yep.
And I also said to them too, the only way a representative can truly represent every single person in their district is through defending their constitutional rights. Because inherently, if I just want to legislate based on the whims of one constituent, I'm automatically disenfranchising another. It's not
Exactly.
everyone's going to have the same beliefs or opinions or what they want in the government. So really, the constitutional aspect is what I'm really trying to hammer in my district, because that's what we've strayed from, and that's our foundation, our country, and our law. We need to return to it.
Definitely love what they're hearing. So now that you're down here at Alec, obviously your first Alec meeting was, why else would you be going to an Alec meeting? Not an actual, until you were elected to the state legislature. What have you found? What are the workshops? What are you going into? What's your interest in charge here?
Well, this is my second.
Oh, your
Alec
second.
meeting.
Oh.
I did. I went to the new legislator academy in DC
Okay.
last year, but this is my first
Annual meeting.
Yes, annual meeting. My first annual meeting. Again, a lot of information being thrown at us, a lot of good presenters. I think the last one I was just in the task force for the energy policy has been really most fruitful. What I can bring back to the state of Maine, made a lot of good contacts and how to kind of advance nuclear energy discussion and how to kind of change the public perception and a lot of negative PR in relation to that. I think that's been really positive.
Yeah, well, Lord knows the task force director there, our very own Joe Trotter, can help you out on many stages on that type of
That'd be
legislation.
wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, Ray, I thank you for coming in, sitting down with us right
you.
before lunch. This is Miss Reagan Paul out of the great state of Maine here at Alec's 50th annual meeting in Orlando, Florida.